Hello everyone, I hope you're well today. As promised, I've taken a look at the chart of Joe Biden and I'm back with my take on the big question. Will Joe Biden be successful if he runs for president again in 2024? This has been a bit trickier than I thought it would be. One of the issues that we have is that Joe Biden's published birth time is 8:30 in the morning, based loosely on somebody's memory. And I stumbled across a Vedic astrologer who has since rectified that birth time and arrived at a corrected birth time of 8:17 in the morning. And this will be the time that I'll be using in this video today. And if we start by bringing up the chart for Joe Biden in November 2020, let's see how this rectified birth time works. And we can immediately see that Joe's progressed sun is coming up to conjunct his progressed ascendant. You may remember that in Donald Trump's chart, his progressed sun was moving towards a conjunction with his natal ascendant when he was successfully elected back in 2016. So we have the similar shades of this here with Joe Biden, that inner drive to shine and for the identity to burst through into a more public and visible role. Even with an altered birth time, Biden's midheaven is ruled by Mercury, and that Mercury is just minutes away from an exact opposition to his Jupiter. Now, Jupiter and Mercury are trine in his natal birth chart, and so it's very important if a natal aspect slowly moves to exactitude. His Sun and Jupiter are also trine in his natal birth chart, and the progressed chart shows that his progressed Sun is moving into an exact inconjunct with that Jupiter. If we look to the relationship between his progressed Sun and his progressed Moon, we can see that he's still in the new Moon phase of his lunation cycle. These are major life cycles spanning nearly 3 decades, and Biden is in the period where we are leaving the past behind and planting new seeds. His solar arc Saturn conjuncted his North Node at this time, and solar arc Jupiter was aspecting both his North Node and his ascendant. And around election day on the 5th of November, a transit from Jupiter was sextiling his Mercury, the ruler of his midheaven, reinforcing that Mercury-Jupiter aspect that we saw in his progressions and promising opportunities for growth and reason for optimism. There was also a very stabilising transit from Saturn, which sextiled his Sun and Venus, again in the month of November. I feel more confident using this revised birth time. Now let's fast forward and have a closer look at how Biden is doing in 2024. Biden is in the crescent moon stage of his lunation cycle by now. His progressed moon is now a good couple of signs ahead of his progressed sun, but he's still in a phase of ongoing movement and action. His progressed midheaven is opposing his natal Saturn. This could mean increased responsibilities, but these could potentially be home responsibilities too. I want to take a closer look at exactly what's going on around the 5th of November. This will be election day, and we can see that transiting Mercury will have been passing over his stellium in Scorpio, crossing his ascendant, opposing Uranus the day before the election, and this aptly depicts the emphasis on his midheaven ruler Mercury around such a busy and important time. We wouldn't want to see difficult aspects from Saturn at this time. Now, transiting Saturn has been trining Joe's Mars on-off during the year, showing a crystallization of energy, a honing in on a desired goal and pursuing that doggedly. That transiting Saturn is within a degree's orb of his Mars for all of November, and that's a good sign. Transiting Mars will square Joe's natal moon over the course of the 5th, 6th of November. This is a passing transit. It can make us feel a little narky and irritable, but it's not a deal breaker. Transiting Pluto has been forming a difficult aspect with Joe Biden's moon during the year, and we'll come back to this in a minute. But on actual election day, it is forming a sextile to his ascendant, and this offers the opportunity for renewal, change, in a relatively gentle, empowering way. This will be in orb around election time. Transiting Neptune has been trine his natal Sun and his Venus during the course of the year, a more spiritual purpose. It's a softening transit, and it is in orb of his natal Sun in early November. So the position around the day of the election is not too bad. We have some of the heavyweight outer planets involved by positive aspect. However, I do have some misgivings. There's an immense amount of activity crammed into the months before November 2024, and I'd like to run through some of those with you. It can be very upsetting when the outermost planet, Pluto, transits our most inner, vulnerable state, our emotions, as symbolised by the moon. And this is what Biden will be undergoing in 2024, because Pluto is going to square his moon. The exact contacts are in February, July, and December of 2024. So this will be an ongoing theme during the whole of next year. Biden's natal chart shows a wide square between his moon and Pluto, and so we can expect this to be a difficult transit. It could reactivate early emotional patterns and deep-seated behaviours, bringing them up for examination and change. Issues of emotional security could be raised, and we would expect emotional pain with this one. And that transiting Pluto will also be squaring his progressed moon exact around August of 2024. So this will be one of the key themes of the year. We also have some important contact by Uranus, because it is transiting through Joe's 6th house of health and opposing his natal Sun. The first contact from Uranus is August-September of 2024. And this transit can be experienced as upsetting. It brings upheaval. We might need to make some important adjustments or changes to our plan of action in order to incorporate the new situation. Uranus always speeds things up, so we might want to break free of any restrictions, anything which is holding us back. We could feel very restless, and we probably won't want to adapt to what other people expect of us. And this upheaval or change that's introduced by Uranus next year is repeated again by the fact that transiting Uranus is going to square his progressed Sun around March of 2024. And it will then go on to square his progressed ascendant. This is likely to be around May of next year. So we have some immense change here, and we might also need to keep an eye on heart or circulatory problems. Transiting Saturn is trining Joe's Mars during 2024, and this could help if he is running for president again and pursuing this goal in a determined and organised manner. That transiting Saturn will make contact with Joe's progressed Venus by conjunction around March. This could show a time of increased responsibilities and a more realistic appraisal of relationships around him. Sometimes there may even be the need to sever a relationship. This is a very sober time. There are a lot of aspects become exact by solar arc over the course of 2024 too, and I'll list those here. We have such a lot of Moon Pluto and also Sun Uranus, Uranus ascendant flavour to 2024 that we can see this is going to be a year that has some difficulties in it. These will not be a spoiler on election day, and in fact some of them may be useful during a campaign period. I'm thinking of the Sun applying to a square with Mercury, heralding the need for increased decision-making, mental acuity, communication and interchange. Solar arc Chiron will also conjunct Mercury, so the emphasis on communication is heightened, and Mercury is his midheaven ruler. There could be increased sensitivity to the healing power of the spoken word. As you've probably picked up, there is so much going on next year that the question may actually be not whether Joe will win the election, more, will Joe survive until the election? I don't mean that literally, but this is an extremely busy and stressful start to 2024. The first half of the year is going to bring its fair share of difficulties. Let's have a look at Joe Biden's solar return. Initially, this isn't looking too good. We can see that Saturn conjuncting his moon on an angle and in the sign of Aquarius, indicating disruption. It squares that Sun-Mars conjunction and Uranus in his 10th house. Joe's natal Mars falls onto the IC in this chart too. That moon in Aquarius speaks of disruption, potentially domestic problems. We may need to consider female relationships, mother. There is difficulty here, but we have to remember that this solar return covers many, many months during which we are expecting Joe to have some difficulty from his transits and his solar arc. It is literally only a fortnight until his next solar return comes into play. So what we are seeing here in this chart could encompass many of the difficulties experienced in the lead up to election, particularly in the first 7 or 8 months of the year. I don't always find the solar return as useful for a black and white date falling around a person's birthday. If we look at Joe's solar return for the year spanning 20 November 2019 to 19th of November 2020, this does hold the promise of big changes to career and life circumstances. Joe has a natal T-square with Chiron conjunct the North Node and squaring in both directions, his Uranus on the one hand and his Mercury-Venus Sun on the other. In this solar return, it's very interesting to note that this T-square has pivoted by around 90 degrees so that that node and Chiron are sitting on his ascendant. His Scorpio stellium are down on the IC, and Uranus is above near his midheaven. Both the lights are angular, and that moon is in a lovely grand trine with Uranus and Jupiter, speaking of excitement and joy and stimulation. Another tool that I do find reasonably accurate for looking over an extended time period to get a theme, a flavour, a pin picture, is the Mars return. And if I bring up Joe Biden's Mars return, which began in December 2019, we can see again that Uranus-Moon-Jupiter aspect repeating itself. The moon is in Taurus, which is essentially quite a stable sign. Mars rules the chart and is in the first house. And Joe's natal Pluto is conjunct the midheaven in this Mars return. Joe's Mars returns to its natal position in October this year, 2023. And so if we have a look at the Mars return for the next couple of years, we can see that the moon is still in Taurus, but has now entered the very last degree. This can sometimes be quite an unstable position, and we have Uranus nearby. There is a lovely kite formation with that Venus-Neptune spanning his midheaven IC axis and trining with Pluto. My eyes are drawn to the moon again, because Joe's natal Uranus is also conjuncting that moon. There really is a tremendous emphasis on moon issues for the coming period. Mars is not in the best position, and it's opposing Jupiter, as are the Sun and Mercury. Will this be a case of Joe overextending himself? We've seen before that Mercury-Jupiter combinations don't play out badly for Joe. Indeed, he had an opposition by progression when he was first elected. And so in concluding, there's been a tremendous amount of information to absorb, far more than when I analysed Trump's chances of winning the election. And the first part of 2024 will bring some change and disruption. There's a large emotional component to this, and the moon, symbolic of our domestic situation, the wife, the mother, our emotional constitution, is certainly under a lot of pressure. His solar return did have Jupiter hovering nearby the midheaven, and election day itself is not unfavourably aspected. In my opinion, if Joe can move through the first part of next year, then as he approaches election day, his chances are as good as anybody's. I would not rule out success. And I'm intrigued as to what the next year will bring for him. The next candidate that I'll be taking a look at is Kennedy Jr. And I hope to have that video within a week or so. Until then, do take care.